I sold my house and my war veteran medals to pay for my daughter's college. At her graduation, she said into the microphone, "I want to thank my father-in-law, the one most responsible, for this achievement." The next morning, I left a box at her door. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. I sat in the back row of the auditorium, my weathered hands gripping the program so tightly the paper crinkled. 25 years of military service had taught me to stay calm under pressure, but nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen on that stage. The lights dimmed, and there she was, Leah, my daughter, beautiful in her cap and gown, radiant with the confidence that comes from achieving your dreams. For a moment, my chest swelled with pride. All those sleepless nights, all those sacrifices, had led to this moment. The dean called her name as valedictorian, and she walked to the podium with the grace I remembered from when she was 5, dancing around our living room. My throat tightened with emotion as she adjusted the microphone. "Thank you all for being here today," Leah began, her voice clear and strong. "This achievement wouldn't have been possible without the support of so many people." I leaned forward, my heart pounding. This was it. This was when she'd acknowledge everything I'd given up for her. "First, I want to thank my husband Marcus for believing in me through the long study sessions and stress." She smiled toward the front row where I could see the back of Marcus's head. "And most importantly, I want to thank my father-in-law, Robert, who truly made this dream possible. Without his financial support and guidance, I never would have made it through law school." The words hit me like shrapnel. I felt my chest collapse, all the air rushing out of my lungs. My hands started shaking, not from age but from shock. She continued talking, thanking professors and friends, but I couldn't hear anything over the ringing in my ears. She hadn't mentioned me, not once. After everything I'd sacrificed, I might as well have been invisible. I looked around the auditorium, wondering if anyone else noticed the glaring omission. Did they know that the man sitting in the back row had sold his childhood home to pay for her first year? Did they know about the Purple Heart and Bronze Star gathering dust in some collector's case because her education mattered more than my military honors? Leah finished her speech to thunderous applause. I watched her embrace Marcus and his father Robert, a real estate mogul who had swooped into our lives 2 years ago with his expensive suits and condescending smile. The same man who had somehow convinced my daughter that I was an embarrassment to her new social circle. As the ceremony concluded and families gathered for photos, I remained seated. Students and parents flowed around me like water around a stone. I watched from afar as the Peterson family posed for picture after picture, Leah beaming between Marcus and Robert, while his wife, Sandra, adjusted Leah's hair. My phone buzzed, a text from Leah. "Dad, thanks for coming. We're going to dinner with Marcus's family to celebrate. Maybe we can catch up later this week?" Later this week. Not tonight. Not at her celebration dinner. Later this week, when it was convenient, when she could spare an hour between her new life and whatever remained of our relationship. I stood slowly, my knees protesting. 63 years old, and I felt ancient. The walk to the parking lot seemed endless, each step echoing with memories of better times. Leah as a little girl running to greet me when I came home on leave. Leah at 16 crying on my shoulder when her first boyfriend broke her heart. Leah at 21 promising she'd never forget how hard I worked to give her opportunities I never had. In my truck, I sat for a long time staring at the building where my daughter had just erased me from her success story. The dashboard clock read 8:45 p.m. By now, they were probably at some fancy restaurant, toasting Leah's future, while I drove home alone to a one-bedroom apartment. The drive back was a blur of streetlights and bitter thoughts. I'd been naive to think that blood mattered more than money. Robert Peterson could give Leah things I never could: connections, social status, a lifestyle she'd grown to crave. What could a retired sergeant with a government pension offer in comparison? But I wasn't angry yet. That would come later. Right now, I just felt hollow, like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything that mattered. When I got home, I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in my recliner, staring at the empty walls of my apartment. I'd sold most of my furniture along with everything else. The only decorations were a few photos of Leah and my military service photos. I picked up the frame holding Leah's high school graduation picture. She was 18 then, still my little girl who called me daddy and meant it. When had that changed? When had I become a burden to be hidden rather than a father to be celebrated? My phone rang. For a moment, hope flickered that it might be Leah calling to explain, to apologize, to somehow make this right. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Chen. "Gregory, I saw the ceremony online. Congratulations on Leah's graduation. You must be so proud." "Yeah," I managed. "Very proud." "I didn't see you in any of the photos they posted on social media. Were you not able to make it?" I closed my eyes. Even my neighbor had noticed my absence from Leah's moment of triumph. I was there, just stayed in the background. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness wondering how I'd become a background character in my own daughter's life. Tomorrow, I decided, I would start putting together something that would remind Leah exactly who had made her success possible. She wanted to forget me? Fine. But first, she needed to remember everything she was choosing to leave behind. The next morning, I woke with a headache that had nothing to do with the bourbon. Sunlight streamed through my apartment's single window, highlighting how empty the place really was. No family photos on the mantel anymore, no comfortable furniture, no mementos from a lifetime of service and fatherhood. I'd sold it all for her. As I made my morning coffee, memories crashed over me like artillery fire. It started 3 years ago when Leah got accepted to law school. I was so proud, I called everyone I knew. My little girl, the first in our family to go to graduate school. Then came the bill, $58,000 per year for 3 years. I remember staring at those numbers, my hands shaking as I held the financial aid letter. Even with some assistance, we were looking at over $120,000 in total costs. My pension covered my basic needs. But this was a mountain I couldn't climb with my resources. That's when I started making calls. The first thing to go was my father's house, the one I'd inherited after he passed. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, with a garden my mother had tended for 40 years. It wasn't much by today's standards, but it was home. It was history. It was the place where Leah had spent countless weekends helping her grandfather fix old radios in the basement. The realtor, a young man in an expensive suit, walked through like he was evaluating a used car. "The foundation needs work," he said, making notes on his tablet. "And this electrical system is definitely not up to code. Best I can do is $95,000. $95,000 for a house full of memories. For the bedroom where my parents had slept for 37 years of marriage. For the kitchen where my mother had taught Leah how to make apple pie from scratch. I signed the papers anyway. But $95,000 wasn't enough, not even close. That's when I started going through my military collection. 25 years of service had earned me some recognition. A Purple Heart from my tour in Afghanistan, a Bronze Star from Iraq, a handful of commendation medals and service ribbons that represented the best years of my life. The military memorabilia dealer was a collector himself, a soft-spoken man named Harrison, who clearly understood what these meant. "Sergeant, are you sure about this?" he asked, holding my Purple Heart up to the light. "These awards represent your service to your country." "My daughter's education represents my service to her future," I told him. He paid me $28,000 for everything, every medal, every ribbon, every certificate, $28,000 for 25 years of putting my life on the line for my country. Still not enough. I took a job at the local hardware store, working part-time to supplement my pension. Then a weekend job at a furniture warehouse, loading trucks despite my arthritic knees and the shrapnel still lodged in my left shoulder. Some days the pain was so bad I could barely lift my arms, but I kept working. Leah never asked where the money was coming from. When I'd call to check on her, she'd tell me about her classes, her new friends, her fancy study groups. She sounded happy, excited about her future. That was enough for me then. The second year was harder. I'd exhausted my savings and liquidated everything of value. That's when I sold my truck and bought a 15-year-old Honda with 200,000 miles on it. The truck had been my pride and joy. A Ford F-150 I'd bought brand new with my retirement bonus. But the Honda was reliable, and got better gas mileage for my commute to work. I picked up a third job cleaning offices at night. 3 hours of emptying trash cans and mopping floors after business is closed. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid $12 an hour under the table. My body started breaking down. The old injuries from my military service flared up constantly. My back ached from the warehouse work. My knees swelled from all the walking and lifting. Some nights, I'd come home and collapse in my chair, too tired to even eat dinner. But Leah was thriving. Her grades were excellent. She'd made law review. She was dating Marcus Peterson, whose father could provide the kind of life I'd always dreamed of giving her. The third year nearly killed me. I was working 70 hours a week across 3 jobs, barely sleeping, living on instant ramen and whatever free food I could find. I lost 30 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. My doctor warned me about my blood pressure, but I couldn't afford to slow down. That's when Leah called with news that should have been wonderful. "Dad, Marcus proposed." Her voice was bubbling with excitement. "We're getting married next summer, right after graduation. His father wants to help plan everything." Art, I was happy for her, I really was. But as she described the engagement party and wedding plans, all funded by the Peterson family, I realized something that cut deep. I would be a guest at my own daughter's wedding. A poor relation invited out of obligation, not family celebrating together. The wedding cost $47,000. The Petersons paid for everything from the venue to the flowers to Leah's dress. I contributed what I could. $300 for a small floral arrangement that nobody noticed. During the reception, I watched Robert Peterson give a toast about welcoming Leah into their family, about how proud he was to have such an accomplished daughter-in-law. Everyone applauded while I sat at a table in the back with distant relatives I barely knew. That night, I realized I'd sold everything I owned to educate a daughter who was embarrassed by my existence. But I told myself it was worth it. She was happy, successful, married to a good man. That's what fathers do, right? We sacrifice so our children can have better lives than we did. I was wrong. Fathers sacrifice for children who remember the sacrifice, who honor it, who understand what it cost. I didn't know then that Leah had already started telling people that Robert Peterson had paid for her education, that she'd created a story where I was just a struggling veteran who couldn't afford to help, that she'd rewritten our history to fit better with her new life. I didn't know until yesterday when she stood on that stage and thanked everyone who'd made her success possible, except the man who'd given up everything to make it happen. Now I knew the truth. My sacrifice hadn't earned me gratitude. It had earned me erasure. But that was about to change. The phone call came 3 days after the graduation ceremony. I was sitting in my kitchen eating a can of soup for dinner when Leah's number appeared on my screen. For a moment, hope flickered in my chest. Maybe she'd realized her mistake. Maybe she was calling to explain. "Hi, Dad." Her voice was cheerful but distant, like she was checking an item off her to-do list. "I wanted to thank you for coming to graduation. I know it meant a lot that you were there." I gripped the phone tighter. "You did it? Because you didn't mention me in your speech." There was a pause. "Dad, you know how these things are. I had to keep it brief. I couldn't thank everyone personally." "You thanked Robert." Another pause, longer this time. "Well, he did help financially, you know that." The words hit like a slap. "He helped financially. Leah, where do you think the money for your law school came from?" "Dad, let's not do this. I know you helped as much as you could, but Robert really stepped up when we needed him most. I don't want to argue about money." I set down my spoon, my appetite gone. "When exactly did Robert step up? Because I have receipts showing every tuition payment I made for 3 years. That's not... Dad, you're being dramatic. Look, Marcus and I are busy setting up our new apartment. His parents got us a place in Riverside Heights. Maybe we can have dinner next week?" Riverside Heights? The most expensive neighborhood in the city, where houses started at $500,000 and climbed from there. "Leah, we need to talk about what really happened, about what I sacrificed." "I have to go, Dad. Marcus is calling. Love you." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hand shaking with rage and disbelief. She dismissed me like a telemarketer, cutting me off before I could even explain, but her words haunted me. Robert really stepped up when we needed him most. What did that mean? When had Robert supposedly helped? I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Leah's voice thanking Robert Peterson for making her dreams possible. By morning, I'd made a decision. I needed to know exactly how this story had been twisted. I drove to Riverside Heights, to the address Leah had mentioned during one of our brief phone calls months ago. The Peterson family estate sat on 2 acres of manicured lawns, with a circular driveway and more windows than I could count. My Honda looked like a rust bucket parked next to the 3 luxury cars in their driveway. I rang the doorbell, not sure what I planned to say. Sandra Peterson answered, her face cycling through surprise, confusion, and barely concealed disdain when she saw me. "Gregory, what are you doing here?" "I need to speak with Robert. It's about Leah's education." She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "He's in his study, I suppose. Come in." The inside of their house was like a museum. Original artwork on the walls, marble floors, furniture that probably cost more than my annual pension. Sandra led me through hallways lined with family photos, including several recent ones of Leah and Marcus that I'd never seen. Robert's study was the size of my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive oak desk, leather furniture that looked like it belonged in a gentleman's club. Robert himself sat behind the desk in a silk shirt and tie, even though it was Saturday afternoon. "Gregory," he said without getting up, "this is unexpected. What can I do for you?" I sat down in the chair across from his desk without being invited. "I want to know about the story you and Leah have been telling people, about how you paid for her education." Robert's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "I think there might be some confusion. The only confusion is how my daughter stood on that stage and thanked you for something I did." Robert leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was an interesting but irrelevant specimen. "Gregory, I understand you're upset, but you have to look at this from Leah's perspective. She's building a new life now, a life with status, connections, opportunities. Sometimes that requires editing the narrative." "Editing the narrative?" "I sold my father's house. I sold my military medals. I worked 3 jobs until my body nearly gave out. That's not a narrative. That's reality." "And that reality," Robert said quietly, "doesn't fit the image Leah needs to project in our social circle." The words hung in the air like poison gas. I felt my chest tighten as the full scope of their deception became clear. "You convinced her to lie?" "I convinced her to be strategic." Robert opened a desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder. "Do you know what this is?" "This is a detailed financial plan I prepared for Leah and Marcus. Their mortgage, their cars, their country club membership, their future children's private school tuition. Everything mapped out for the next 20 years. He slid the folder across the desk. "Your daughter has a bright future ahead of her. But that future requires her to be seen as someone who belongs in our world. A world where fathers are successful businessmen, not struggling veterans scraping together tuition money." I stared at the folder without opening it. "So you convinced her to pretend you paid for law school?" "I convinced her that perception matters more than sentiment. The truth is, Gregory, your sacrifice was noble, but ultimately small-minded. You gave her an education. I'm giving her a life. By teaching her to lie about her own father?" Robert's patience was wearing thin. "By teaching her that success requires sacrifices. Sometimes that means leaving behind people who can't help you move forward." The room felt like it was closing in around me. People like me. "I'm not the villain here, Gregory. I'm offering Leah opportunities you could never provide, a network of connections, business partnerships, social standing. She understands that maintaining those relationships requires certain adjustments to her personal history." I thought about all those late nights, working until my body screamed in protest. All those mornings when I could barely get out of bed but forced myself to go to work anyway. All those sacrifices I'd made believing that my daughter would appreciate them, honor them, remember them. "She knows the truth," I said, "Erica. She knows I paid for everything." "Of course she knows. But she also knows that the truth is sometimes less important than the story people need to hear." Robert stood up, signaling that our conversation was over. "Leah has chosen her path, Gregory. You can either accept your place in her new life or make things difficult for everyone. And what place is that? A quiet one, a grateful one. You should be proud that your daughter has risen above her circumstances. Don't drag her back down because your feelings are hurt." I stood slowly, my legs unsteady with rage and disbelief. My feelings? My feelings. Leah is happy, Gregory. She's successful, she's married to a wonderful man, she has everything she ever dreamed of. Don't ruin that because you need recognition for doing what any father should do. I wanted to hit him. For the first time since my military days, I actually fantasized about violence. But instead, I turned and walked out of his study, through his mansion, past his perfect family photos, and back to my dented Honda. Sandra was waiting by the front door, her expression softer now, almost pitying. "Gregory, I hope you understand. We all want what's best for Leah." I paused at the threshold. "And you think lying about her father is what's best?" "I think fitting in is what's best. The world Leah lives in now, it's competitive, unforgiving. She needs every advantage, even if that advantage comes from erasing me." Sandra didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. As I drove home, the full weight of their betrayal settled over me. It wasn't just that Leah had failed to acknowledge my sacrifices. It was that she'd actively participated in rewriting our history, turning me from the father who'd given everything into an embarrassing footnote to be hidden away. They thought they could erase me. They thought I'd quietly accept my demotion from father to burden. They were wrong. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a bottle of bourbon and every piece of documentation I could find. Bank statements, receipts, canceled checks, 3 years of financial records that told the real story of Leah's education. The numbers were brutal in their honesty. $58,000 for the first year, $61,000 for the second, $63,000 for the third. Plus books, living expenses, bar exam fees, a total of $194,000. Every penny traced back to me. The house sale, the medal collection, 3 years of working myself into the ground. Not a single payment from Robert Peterson or anyone else in his family. I opened my laptop and started printing everything, every bank transfer, every tuition receipt, every record that proved what really happened. The printer wheezed and groaned, probably older than Leah's law school education, but it got the job done. By midnight, I had a stack of papers 6 inches thick. Undeniable proof that I, not Robert Peterson, had funded my daughter's dreams. But documentation wasn't enough. I needed something that would make Leah confront the full weight of what she'd done, something that would force her to remember who she used to be before the Petersons taught her to be ashamed of her origins. I went to my bedroom closet and pulled out the storage box I kept on the top shelf. Inside were the remnants of my relationship with Leah. Photos from her childhood, report cards, drawings she'd made me when she was little, a Father's Day card from when she was 8 that said, "You're the best daddy in the whole world," in purple crayon. There was a letter she'd written me during her first year of law school, back when she still called every week and seemed genuinely grateful for my support. I unfolded it carefully, the paper soft from being read so many times. "Dear Dad, I know I don't say this enough, but thank you for everything you're doing to help me achieve my dreams. I know it's not easy, and I know you're making sacrifices I probably don't even understand. I promise I'll make it up to you someday. When I'm a successful lawyer, I'll take care of you the way you've taken care of me. I love you more than you'll ever know. Your grateful daughter, Leah." I read it 3 times, each reading like a knife to the chest. When had that grateful daughter turned into someone who could publicly erase me from her success story? I knew the answer. It was gradual, starting about 6 months after she started dating Marcus. Her calls became less frequent, her conversations more distant. She stopped asking about my health, my work, my life. I became just the person who sent money when she needed it. The transformation accelerated after the engagement. Suddenly she was too busy with wedding planning to talk, too stressed with finals to visit, too focused on her new life to remember the old one. But I'd told myself it was normal. Young women preparing for marriage, building new families, moving on with their lives. I never imagined she was actively working to erase me from her narrative. I spent the next week preparing my response. Not a letter this time. Leah had made it clear that words wouldn't reach her. This needed to be something she couldn't ignore, couldn't dismiss, couldn't explain away. I drove to the storage unit where I'd kept a few things after selling the house. Most of it was junk I should have thrown away years ago, but buried in the back was what I was looking for. My father's old toolbox, solid steel, painted green, with his name stenciled on the side in white letters. Frank Morrison, United States Army. He'd carried that box through 3 tours of duty, then used it for 40 years of fixing everything that broke in our house. I cleaned it carefully, removing years of dust and grime until the green paint gleamed like new. This would be perfect for what I had in mind. Inside, I began arranging my materials, not randomly, but with the precision of a military operation, each item positioned for maximum impact. First, the financial documents. Every receipt, every bank statement, every piece of paper that proved I'd funded her education. I organized them chronologically, creating a timeline of sacrifice that was impossible to misinterpret. Next, the photos. Leah as a baby, sleeping in my arms during one of my few leaves home. Leah at 5, proudly wearing my military cap that was too big for her head. Leah at graduation from high school, hugging me after I gave the speech about her being the first in our family to attend college. Then the personal items. Her childhood drawings, report cards I'd saved, the Father's Day cards with their innocent promises of love and gratitude, each item a reminder of who we used to be to each other. I included a copy of her letter from law school, the one where she promised to take care of me when she became successful. I wanted her to remember those words, to confront the person she used to be. But the centerpiece would be something else entirely. Something that would force her to confront not just what she'd done to me, but what she'd become. I wrote out a detailed timeline, not just of the financial sacrifices, but of the personal ones. The nights I'd worked despite being sick, the weekends I'd spent at the warehouse instead of resting, the medical appointments I'd skipped because I couldn't afford to miss work. Every sacrifice documented, every cost itemized, not just the money, but the physical toll, the emotional price, the relationship with my own daughter that I'd lost somewhere along the way. At the bottom of the timeline, I added one final entry, the day my daughter publicly thanked another man for my sacrifices and pretended I didn't exist. I sealed everything in my father's toolbox along with a single sheet of paper. On it, I wrote just a few lines. This box contains the truth about your education and who really paid for it. It also contains reminders of who you used to be before you learned to be ashamed of where you came from. I thought you should have both, since you seem to have forgotten. Your father, the one who actually sacrificed everything. Gregory Morrison. The weight of the toolbox surprised me, not because of the physical contents, but because of everything it represented. 3 years of my life, decades of fatherhood. A relationship that had been systematically dismantled by people who thought I wasn't good enough for their social circle. I sat in my truck outside the post office for 20 minutes, holding the shipping label with Leah and Marcus's address. Part of me wondered if I was making a mistake, if I should just let sleeping dogs lie, accept my place as the forgotten father, and try to rebuild some kind of relationship with my daughter. But then I remembered her voice on that stage, the confidence with which she'd thanked Robert Peterson, the way she'd looked right past me like I was invisible. No, she needed to remember. She needed to confront what she'd done and who she'd become. And if this destroyed what was left of our relationship, well, maybe there wasn't much left to destroy anyway. I walked into the post office and handed the box to the clerk. "I need this delivered tomorrow," I said. "Signature required." The clerk weighed the package and printed a label. "That'll be $47.60 for overnight delivery." $47. Almost as much as I spent on groceries for 2 weeks. But some things are worth the expense. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Not anger anymore, and not sadness. Something cleaner, sharper. The satisfaction of a mission about to be completed. The certainty that comes from finally taking action instead of just enduring. Tomorrow, Leah would receive my package. Tomorrow, she would have to confront the truth about her success and the father she'd thrown away to achieve it. Tomorrow, everything would change. The call came at 11:37 a.m. on Tuesday. I was sitting in my recliner, drinking coffee and pretending to read the newspaper, but really just staring at the clock and wondering if the package had arrived yet. When my phone rang and I saw Leah's number, my heart started pounding, like I was back in combat. "Dad?" Her voice was different, shaky, small, like she was 12 years old again and had broken something valuable. I got your package." I set down my coffee cup with hands that weren't quite steady. "Did you open it?" "Yes." The word came out as barely a whisper. "Dad, oh God, I think I'm going to be sick." I could hear her breathing heavily, like she was trying not to hyperventilate. In the background, I heard Marcus's voice asking if she was okay, but she didn't answer him. "Where are you right now?" I asked. "At home. Marcus is here." "Dad, all those papers, all those receipts, what about them? They're real, aren't they? You really paid for everything." I closed my eyes. Every penny, Leah. Every single penny. She started crying then. Not the delicate tears of a composed woman, but the ugly, choking sobs of someone whose world had just collapsed. I could hear Marcus in the background, his voice more insistent now, demanding to know what was wrong. "I can't breathe," Leah gasped into the phone. "Dad, I can't—" "Marcus, call 911. I think I'm having a panic attack." The line went dead. For the next 3 hours, I paced my apartment like a caged animal. Part of me wanted to drive to the hospital, but I knew I wouldn't be welcome. The Petersons would circle their wagons, protecting Leah from any more uncomfortable truths. My phone stayed silent until 4:15 p.m. This time, it was Marcus calling. "Gregory, it's Marcus. Leah asked me to call you." His voice was different, too. None of the polite distance I'd grown accustomed to. He sounded confused, maybe even a little afraid. "Is she okay?" "Physically, yes. The doctor said it was a severe anxiety attack. They gave her something to calm down, but she's not doing well emotionally." I waited for him to continue. "Gregory, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Did you really pay for all of Leah's law school?" "Yes." "The whole thing? All 3 years? Every tuition payment, every fee, every expense?" There was a long pause. "But my father said—" "He told us he'd helped with the costs. That's why Leah thanked him at graduation." My grip tightened on the phone. "Your father lied to you?" "That's impossible. He showed us financial documents, proof that he'd transferred money for Leah's education." "Then I suggest you look at those documents more carefully. Check the dates. Check where the money actually went." Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear the wheels turning in Marcus's head. "Gregory, I'm looking at some papers right now. Documents my father showed us last year when we were discussing the graduation speech. But these aren't tuition payments. These are transfers to our joint account, money he gave us for the down payment on our house." The pieces were clicking into place for him, just like they had for me in Robert's study. "Your father let you believe he'd paid for law school when he'd actually just helped with your house?" "It looks that way." "Jesus Christ, Gregory, I had no idea." When Leah was writing her graduation speech, Dad suggested she thank him for his support. He said it would mean a lot to him, and we thought he deserved the recognition for everything he'd done. "And what about everything I'd done?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "We thought you'd helped as much as you could. We didn't know—" "God, Gregory, we didn't know you'd sacrificed everything." I could hear voices in the background. A woman's voice that sounded like Sandra Peterson, asking who Marcus was talking to. "Where's Leah now?" I asked. "She's resting. The doctor said she needs to stay calm for the rest of the day, but Gregory, she wants to see you. She's been asking for you ever since she opened that box." "And your parents? Are they there?" "They were. They left about an hour ago. There was a discussion, a heated one. Leah showed them the contents of your package. Dad tried to explain, but—" Marcus's voice trailed off. But there's no explaining it away, is there? The numbers don't lie. The receipts don't lie. You paid for everything, and we let everyone believe someone else deserved the credit." I sank back into my chair, suddenly feeling every one of my 63 years. "Why didn't you ask? Why didn't anyone ever ask where the money was really coming from?" "Because we wanted to believe Dad's version. It was easier. It fit better with the life we were trying to build." Marcus's voice cracked. "Gregory, I am so sorry. We failed you. I failed you. It's not your fault, son. You didn't know." But I should have known. I should have asked questions. I should have made sure Leah knew the truth before she gave that speech. Through the phone, I could hear Leah's voice in the background, weak but insistent. Marcus put his hand over the receiver, but I could still make out her words. Is that Dad? I need to talk to Dad. Gregory, she wants to speak with you. Are you okay with that? I took a deep breath. Put her on. There was a rustling sound. Then Leah's voice, hoarse from crying. Daddy? She hadn't called me Daddy in over 5 years. I'm here, sweetheart. Daddy, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I read every paper in that box. I saw the receipt for your medals. I saw the house sale. I saw everything you gave up for me. Her voice broke completely, and she started sobbing again. I know you did, honey. How could I have forgotten? How could I have let them convince me that someone else deserved credit for your sacrifices? Because you wanted to fit in. You wanted to belong in their world. But at what cost? I threw away my own father. I stood on that stage and erased you from my life like you never mattered. I closed my eyes, feeling tears I'd been holding back for days finally start to fall. You matter more to me than any recognition, Leah. You always have. But I hurt you. I humiliated you. I let people believe lies about the most important relationship in my life. Yes, you did. The honesty of it seemed to shock her into silence. But, I continued, you were manipulated by people who made you believe that success required abandoning your past. They're wrong. But I understand why you believed them. What can I do, Daddy? How can I fix this? I looked around my empty apartment at the life I'd built from the remnants of my sacrifices. I don't know if you can fix it, Leah. Some things once broken don't go back together the same way. Please don't give up on me. Please. I know I don't deserve it, but please don't give up on me. I could hear the desperation in her voice, the fear that she'd lost me forever. Part of me wanted to comfort her immediately, to tell her everything would be okay. But another part of me knew that would be too easy. Some lessons required sitting with the discomfort. I need some time to think, Leah. This isn't something that gets fixed with an apology. I understand, but Daddy, thank you for sending me that box. Thank you for making me face the truth. I needed to see it, even if it broke my heart. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Not satisfaction exactly, and not vindication. Something deeper than that. For the first time in 3 years, my daughter knew the truth. She knew what I'd sacrificed. She knew what she'd thrown away. Now, we'd both have to figure out what to do with that knowledge. 2 weeks passed before I heard from Leah again. I'd half expected her to call the next day, full of promises and plans to make everything right. The silence told me she was finally taking this seriously, finally understanding that some wounds don't heal with words. When she did call, her voice was different, steadier. More like the daughter I'd raised than the stranger she'd become. Dad, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I've made some decisions. I was in my kitchen, making dinner for one like I had every night for the past 3 years. What kind of decisions? I'm leaving Marcus. The words hit me like a physical blow. Leah, you don't have to do that. This isn't about your marriage. Yes, it is. It's about everything. Dad, I've been living a lie for 2 years. I've been pretending to be someone I'm not. Married into a family that taught me to be ashamed of who I really am. I can't do it anymore. I set down my spatula and sat at the kitchen table. What happened? After you sent that box, after I realized what I'd done, I tried to talk to Marcus about it. Really talk. I wanted to understand how we'd gotten to this point, how I'd ended up thanking his father for your sacrifices. She paused, and I could hear her taking a shaky breath. He was horrified when he realized the truth. But when I suggested we needed to make a public correction, maybe have his father issue a statement or write an apology, Marcus said it would embarrass his family. He said people would think less of them if they knew they'd been taking credit for something they didn't do. My hands clenched into fists. And what did you say? I told him that people should think less of them, that they'd done something despicable. And that's when I realized I'd married into a family that cared more about their reputation than about basic human decency. I felt a mixture of pride and heartbreak. Pride that my daughter had finally found her moral compass again. Heartbreak that it had cost her so much. Where are you staying? I got an apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I'm going back to work at the public defender's office. Remember how I always wanted to help people who couldn't afford lawyers? Well, now I'm one of those people who can't afford much either. I smiled for the first time in weeks. You sound like yourself again. I feel like myself again, for the first time in years. Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Do you think you can ever forgive me? Not right away. I know it'll take time. But someday? I looked around my sparse apartment at the life I'd built from the ashes of my sacrifices. 3 weeks ago, I would have said forgiveness was impossible. But hearing the strength in Leah's voice, knowing she'd chosen integrity over comfort, changed something inside me. I think forgiveness is possible, Leah, but it can't go back to the way it was before. I know, I don't deserve that anyway, but maybe we can build something new, something honest. Maybe we can. Dad, I want to do something public. I want people to know the truth about who really paid for my education. I want to write an article for the Bar Association newsletter. Tell the whole story. Would that be okay with you? I thought about it for a moment. Part of me wanted the vindication, wanted people to know what I'd sacrificed, but a larger part of me just wanted my daughter back. You don't need to do that for me, Leah. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. I need people to know who my father really is. I need them to know that the most important person in my success story isn't a wealthy businessman, but a veteran who gave up everything because he believed in his daughter's dreams. 6 months later, I was sitting in my truck outside the Veterans Administration clinic where I'd started volunteering. It was Thursday afternoon, and I'd just finished helping 3 young vets navigate their benefits paperwork. The work didn't pay much, but it felt good to use my experience to help others who'd served. My phone buzzed with a text from Leah. Dad, check your email. The article got published today. I'd almost forgotten about the piece she'd written. It had taken her 3 months to get it just right, and another 3 for the State Bar Association to approve it for publication. I'd read draft after draft, each one more honest and painful than the last. When I got home, I opened my laptop and found the email with the link. The headline read, "The Hidden Cost of Success, a Lawyer's Reflection on Sacrifice, Gratitude, and the Parent Who Gave Everything." I'd read it before, but seeing it published official made it feel different. Real. Leah had told the whole story, my military service, the sacrifices I'd made for her education, the way she'd been manipulated into crediting someone else for my work. But more than that, she'd written about what it meant to lose yourself in pursuit of acceptance and what it cost to find your way back. The comment section was already filling up with responses. Some were critical, calling her ungrateful or opportunistic, but most were supportive, sharing their own stories of family members who'd sacrificed without recognition. One comment caught my eye. This article made me call my father for the first time in 2 years. Thank you for reminding me that some people love us enough to give up everything, and that forgetting their sacrifices doesn't make us successful. It makes us smaller. My phone rang. Leah, did you read it? Just finished. Are you okay with it? I know some parts were hard to read. I looked around my apartment. It was still small, still sparse, but it felt different now. Not empty, but peaceful. I'd started dating again, a nurse from the VA clinic who understood what it meant to serve others. I'd made new friends among the veterans I worked with. I'd built a life that didn't revolve around being needed by people who didn't appreciate the need. I'm proud of you, Leah, for writing it, for telling the truth, for finding your way back to who you're supposed to be. I'm proud of you too, Dad, for never giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. You're my daughter. That's not something you give up on. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart. After we hung up, I sat in my recliner with a cup of coffee and thought about the journey that had brought us here. The pain, the betrayal, the slow work of rebuilding trust. It hadn't been easy, and it wasn't finished yet. Some weeks we talked every day. Others, we needed space to process the complicated emotions that came with healing a broken relationship. But we were trying, really trying, not to go back to what we'd been, but to build something new and honest. The box I'd sent her 6 months ago sat empty now on my kitchen counter. I'd asked for it back, not because I needed the reminder of what I'd sacrificed, but because I wanted the symbol of what we'd survived. My father's toolbox, which had carried tools for building and fixing things, had become the container for rebuilding the most important relationship in my life. Some things, once broken, don't go back together the same way. Sometimes they come back stronger, held together by honesty instead of habit, by choice instead of obligation. I looked at the framed photo on my coffee table. A new one, taken just last week when Leah came to visit. We were standing outside the VA clinic, both of us in jeans and flannel shirts, looking like what we'd always been. A father and daughter who'd found their way back to each other. She wasn't the polished society wife anymore, and I wasn't the forgotten father. We were just us, imperfect and honest and real. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.